All right, let's dive right in. Today we're going to tackle a huge challenge that every single data professional faces. How do you manage all the different flavors of data? We're going to use a food delivery app, we'll call it Hungry Now, as our guide to figure out, when do you need a nice clean table? When is flexible JSON the right move? And when do you have to just get your hands dirty with raw text? Let's get into it.
And that quote, it hits the nail on the head. Behind every single tap you make in an app like Hungry Now, there is a whole universe of data being generated. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. That data comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and each one plays by its own set of rules.
So let's start with the classic, the one we all know and probably learned first, structured data. This is the absolute bedrock of so many systems, that perfectly organized world of rows and columns. The easiest way to think about it is like a super strict spreadsheet. Before a single piece of data is allowed in, we've already defined the rules. An order ID has to be a number, an order date has to be a date. There are absolutely no exceptions. It's rigid, it's predictable, and because of that, it's incredibly powerful. So, take a look at this orders table from our Hungry Now app. This is the poster child for structured data. Every single column is predefined, and every row follows the rules perfectly. This super clean, predictable format is exactly why relational databases, think Postgres or Azure SQL, can slice and dice this kind of data at lightning speed. So how do we enforce all this structure? Well, we build a strict blueprint from the very beginning. Using SQL commands like create table, we define every single column. Then we link tables together with primary and foreign keys. This is what guarantees that, for example, you can't have an order without a real customer. And finally, we add indexes, which are basically like the index in the back of a textbook, making it incredibly fast to find what you're looking for, even in millions of rows.
And here's the big trade-off, right? This is the double-edged sword of structured data. All that structure gives you blazing fast queries and rock-solid data integrity. It's a dream for business intelligence tools. But that strength is also its biggest weakness. What if the Hungry Now app team wants to add a new feature? Changing this rigid blueprint, what we call the schema, can be a really slow, sometimes painful process.
So that rigidity we just talked about, that's exactly why structured data can't be the answer for everything. To keep up with modern apps that are constantly changing, we need something way more flexible. So, let's say hello to the world of semi-structured data. Now, unlike that rigid table, semi-structured data is more like a labeled container. It's got organization, sure, it uses keys or tags, but it doesn't have that strict, predefined schema. The formats you're going to see all the time for this are JSON and XML.
Just look at this JSON event from a Hungry Now order. See that customer.preferences field? It's an array. It could hold one preference, or it could hold 10. And look at the items field. It's a list of other objects. There is just no way you can cram this kind of nested, variable data into a simple, flat table. It just doesn't fit. So if it doesn't fit in the table, what's the game plan? Well, we use this really clever pattern called Schema-on-read. With structured data, the schema comes first. Here, it's the opposite. We ingest the flexible, sometimes messy JSON first, and then we apply structure to it only when we need to analyze it. This means doing things like flattening out those nested keys and exploding the list of items so that each one gets its own row. We're basically creating order from chaos, but on our own terms.
The huge win here is flexibility. As the Hungry Now app evolves, the JSON can change without bringing the entire database crashing down. It's absolutely perfect for things like application logs or data from third-party APIs. But, and this is a big but, you have to watch out for something called schema drift. That's the nightmare scenario where the app team changes the JSON structure, forgets to tell the data team, and poof, all of your data pipelines suddenly break.
Okay, and that brings us to our final category. This is the Wild West of data. It's the most chaotic, the most challenging to work with, but, and this is key, it's also potentially the most insightful of them all. Unstructured data.
We're talking about data with absolutely zero predefined format. None. This is your free-form text, your images, your audio clips, your videos. You can't just run a SQL query on a photograph or a voice note from a customer, right? It requires a completely different toolbox. And this kind of data is absolutely everywhere in the Hungry Now app. Customer reviews, they have the raw emotion, the why behind a simple star rating. Food photos literally drive sales. And those voice notes from delivery drivers, they might contain the real reason a delivery was late. It's all incredibly valuable, but it's completely raw.
So here's the core dilemma. You have immense value on one hand and immense difficulty on the other. This data holds the real human context, the emotion, the story behind the numbers. But unlocking it is expensive. It takes up a ton of storage, and you need costly AI models for things like natural language processing or computer vision to make any sense of it. And, crucially, it has a huge risk of containing PII, personally identifiable information, like names and addresses that might be buried deep inside a text review.
Okay, so we have these three very different types of data. How in the world do they actually work together in a real system? Let's try to pull them all into one big unified pipeline.
A really common and powerful way to do this is with something called the Medallion architecture: bronze, silver, and gold. Just think of it like a data refinery. The bronze layer is where everything lands first. It's the raw, untouched crude oil in its original format. In the silver layer, we start to refine it. We clean it, we validate it, we give it some structure. Finally, the gold layer is our premium finished product, highly refined aggregated data that's perfectly ready for business dashboards and machine learning models. So with all this in mind, how do you actually choose the right tool for the job? The very first question you should always ask yourself is this: do I need a strict, predefined schema, and do I need to run fast, complex joins on my data? If the answer is yes, you're pretty much always going to be in the world of structured data and relational databases. Now, if the answer is no, then you've got a follow-up question. You have to figure out what kind of flexibility you need. Is your data mostly those flexible key-value pairs, like JSON coming from application logs? That's pointing you towards a NoSQL database or a lakehouse. Or is it just a raw blob of data, a text file, an image, a video? That stuff belongs in object storage, like Amazon S3. And this table here, this really puts it all together in one place. Each data type has its natural home for storage, its own pattern for processing, and its own unique watch-out, that one big thing you have to be careful about. The goal isn't to find one magic tool that does everything. The goal is to understand these trade-offs so you can build a smart, flexible system that always uses the right tool for the right job.
Okay, that's a ton of theory, but let's get really practical. How do you turn all this knowledge into actual, tangible experience that's going to help you in your career? Because, let's be honest, just knowing the definitions is table stakes. The real value, both for your projects and for your career, comes from being able to apply these concepts and then clearly explain what you did and, most importantly, why it mattered.
I mean, just look at these statements. These are not just buzzwords. This is interview gold. They prove you didn't just learn about a concept in a video, you actually used it to solve a real business problem. This is how you show real competence. Whether you're talking about how you modeled data in SQL, ingested messy JSON, or designed an entire data pipeline from scratch. And that brings us to our final thought. The world of data is not getting any simpler. Unstructured data is growing like crazy, and AI is giving us these incredible new tools to unlock its value. So the final question isn't just about what you know today. It's about how you're going to keep adapting your skills to harness the power of all data, no matter what shape or size it comes in.